Snatch Game is the most iconic challenge in RuPaul's Drag Race because of its very long legacy of being included in every single season except for season 1 and All Stars 1. But beyond that, it has been featured everywhere else, even globally, spanning into places where maybe celebrity impersonation in this caliber would have never been expected. Hi, hello, my name is Jer, and today I am going to be ranking every single one of the US Snatch Games, not including All Stars, because the All Stars Snatch Games get so muddled with this stupid of love format, and I hate of love. I hate it. I don't need all this nonsense. I don't like it. So I will be ranking each one of these, and apparently I was in a very hungry mood when I made this bracket, and we'll be going through all 16 available Snatch Games. In the comments, I would love to know what your thoughts are on these Snatch Games and where you think they fall in these tiers. And I teased this maybe months ago, so thank you for everyone who stuck around and waited for this video because I know I talked about it a while ago. So without any further stalling, let's get into it. Also, please make sure to like and subscribe because it took me 3+ hours to get all of this recorded. Because yes, I did watch every single one of them to make sure I was completely researched. So we're gonna start out in season 2. This was the OG Snatch Game. No one really knew what to expect, but I assume that most of these girls were kind of incidentally aware of the match game, kind of in the same way that I, as an older millennial, was aware of TV shows that happened a couple decades before because my parents were still watching reruns of them. I would assume that most of these queens had at least seen an episode or kind of knew of it if the show didn't just flat out give them a DVD to watch while they were in their hotels, so they kind of had an idea of what to do. At this time in reality TV, a lot of shows, when they were riffing off of something else, would give them some type of dossier, some type of source material, something just to help them navigate the challenge. They may have even sat them down and done a movie day. And so I can only assume that's what happened because a lot of them seemed to get what they were doing, because this particular season was a little more about impersonation over comedy. A lot of these characters were just good illusions. They weren't necessarily so bombastically funny. I think what's fascinating is that the entire front row all got redone. We got Paris in the front, Whitney, Britney, Beyonce, even Carol Channing. I am so used to calling her Cheryl Canning that I forgot that her name is Carol Channing. Jesus, even she got redone by Bob in season 8. Some of my favorites are actually Pandora as well as Juju, surprisingly. Obviously, Tatiana wiped out this Snatch Game. I think it kind of set a bar for what future Snatch Games are going to look like. And in my opinion, a successful Snatch Game is either a really good impersonation that character is practically there in the room with you, similar to what Pandora did, or you are such a character in yourself and you are such a farce of that character, almost SNL style, like what Tatiana did, that you think, that's Britney. That makes sense why that's Britney. I think overall, this entire Snatch Game is very silly, and that is what I respond well to. And so for me, because it's the very first, I want to give it a little bit of leeway because it was setting an expectation and a bar for future Snatch Games. I'm gonna say that this is some good soup, because it just makes me smile. Now we move on to season 3, where the bar is still fairly low for what Snatch Game is going to be. We got Delta as Cher, which was crazy. She shakes with age. Raja as Tyra was bananas. Stacey as Monique, I think, was not the winning performance of the week. I think that would have gone, for me, to Alexis Mateo, who did a butch pregnant Alicia Keys. And I don't know why that is so funny to me, but her going, Amber, call me baby, the number, I have it for you. Oh, I am such an Alexis Mateo stan, and I think that there's perfectly good reason why she should have won every one of her seasons she was ever on, and I'm gonna make that video. One of these days, I'm gonna do my full delusional Alexis Mateo stan video, and y'all aren't ready for it. I think Yara's weird British accent is still funny to this day. Sorry. Lubricant remover. What was that? What was that? I gotta know what that was because it wasn't good.
I'm composed, I promise. You don't have to worry about me. I just really thought that was very funny. My thought kind of overall is that it makes me smile in a way that none of the others do. I can always refer back to this one and know that I'm gonna smile. Some of these challenges I watch and I just cringe. I don't like perceiving them. They make me uncomfortable. The lack of improv skills is so obvious. The lack of impersonation is obvious. And this one, everyone genuinely is funny. Even impersonations that landed in the bottom like Mariah's still have an iconic line of, "It's a wooden hanger." And then Stacey saying, "Fuck that skinny bitch." That's a rent-free tenant as well. I think that this is good soup. I love this Snatch Game. I almost want to put it at the top tier. I'm gonna put it at the top tier. This is my ranking. Now we get to season 4, and this one sucks. I'm not gonna lie to any of you in any capacity. This is butt cheeks to watch. And you know what? I think it's Ross's fault. I'm gonna blame Ross Matthews because he was here. And I don't think he's hilarious. He's a fun sucker. I think the biggest problem with season 4's Snatch Game is that it swings so hard into caricature that it loses a lot of the impersonation element, and it loses a lot of comedy in an attempt to make such a large swing. Up until this point, Snatch Game was sort of getting on its feet, trying to figure out what it was trying to be. Season 2, very true to Match Game. Season 3 is starting to kind of pick up on the drag element of it, because in the nightclub, acts always included a celebrity impersonation. Almost every drag queen had one in their repertoire. Morgan is a great example of that, someone who has done so many celebrity illusions because it helps audiences connect with you a little more in a time where maybe drag wasn't as accepted. Having that in your little Rolodex that you could pull from was smart. And I think in season 2, it was a lot more about the look. It was a lot more about the vibe of that character. Season 3 was a lot more about, we're gonna push it a little bit and try to be funny. And season 4 said, we're gonna try and do the bad drag queen that comes to the party. It's not a good impersonation. It's a bad one. It's actively bad. And that's what all of season 4 is. It's an actively bad impersonation of someone who's real, and it's a really big swing and a really big miss. I think that Willem is fucking hilarious in this challenge. I think that Chad is really funny, but then Latrice and Jiggly and Jeremy and Kenya and Milan are unwatchable. They come on and I feel my whole invert into itself. Poor Dita being in the front row, being the only one that was watchable in that group. And even then, she got so steamrolled by Snooki Want Smoosh Smoosh that she just didn't even get to stand out. And I think that could have been a challenge that Dita could have been quite funny in if the front row had not been acting a fool. And it feels bad that everyone sucked so hard. I'm sorry, this is Idiot Sandwich. This is the lowest possible level of hell that Snatch Game could exist in. I don't even care that Chad and Willem were funny because everyone else was bad and I don't want to watch it. I don't want to think about this. I want to forget about the screaming and the farts and the juice and Ross Matthews. I want to forget about Latrice completely checking out. Get it away from me. Next up, we have season 5. I thought that the shenanigans of season 4 were over, and then Detox pissed on the floor, and I thought, so they're not done. And I thought some of that deep-seated cringe would go away. And then Lanesha said, like a big can? Now, before any of y'all start getting all typey in the comments, I am Latino. By now, I think Snatch Game is really established. We know this is coming. It has been on 3 seasons so far. Rue loves it. It is a staple in assuring the judges that you know what you're doing when you're tasked with an assignment, when you are given adequate time to prepare something. Who inspires your drag? Who makes you giggle? Who do you know a lot about? Who can you riff off of that is in pop culture and make them funny? Show off your improv skills, show off your timing, show off your ability to connect with RuPaul. Because if anything, this challenge is a RuPaul connection challenge. Remember that rainbow connection, but it's Runebow connection? Your only job is to make Rue like you in that moment. This is the challenge that separates everybody, because if you don't connect with Rue, you're out. And if Rue does connect with you in some way, you have a lot more longevity on the show. That's not always the case for everyone. Like Peppermint obviously did not connect with Rue at all in that challenge and still made top 2. But then there have been others who were incredibly funny in their Snatch Game who just didn't connect with Rue, and they didn't make it through. That connection could either be really good or really bad, but if Rue makes a connection in some way, take a shot every time I say connection, you have more life in the show. So anyway, this was an established challenge. Everyone knew that it was coming. And I think with this expectation, a lot of them showed up and showed out, like Alaska doing Lady Bunny, Jinx obviously and Little Edie doing a iconic performance, a masterclass of what Snatch Game could and should be, mixing both impersonation and caricature into this new thing that no one had really done before. But then there's just a lot of bad. There's so much bad when you got Ivy, who didn't understand Marilyn, Opa at all, Lanesha doing whatever that was, Coco Lissa being bad, Jade just existing in this space. Detox was not funny at all, but then Roxy comes in like a North Star, guiding light to this Snatch Game because she was hysterical. Those were high points. And that is the thing about this Snatch Game. The highs are good, but the lows are low. I think my kind of general feeling is that this Snatch Game is a little hard to watch. I just don't enjoy watching this Snatch Game because of how bad the bad performances are. Rue will never not be funny for the wrong reason. Lousy, it's lousy. I'm gonna put this at Where's the Lamb Sauce because I think when it was good, there were tasty elements to it. It was juicy, it was full-bodied, but then the bad parts make me want to throw up, and I don't like that. Next up, we have season 6, which proves that bigger is not always better, a philosophy that I carry into every element of my life. I think this one's kind of mid to me, I'm not gonna lie. I think everyone was well studied at best. Everyone kind of knew who their character was, what that character was supposed to do, with the exception of maybe Gina Gum. After watching Cynthia kiss in Canada 3, I do think that Laganja's Rachel Zoe was full of potential. It just didn't reach the mark, but it was well studied. I think Milk's characterization was well studied. I think that Adore obviously knew who Anna Nicole was. And then Taylor came in doing that thing that Jinx did, blending impersonation and caricature into this one melded plant, this one melded hybrid plant that blossomed into something beautiful in the Snatch Game. Controversial opinion, but Jocelyn Fox was top 3 for me this challenge. I don't remember what she wore on the runway that landed her in the bottom because Jocelyn's biggest enemy this season was her budget, but I thought her initial line, I went back into the old country and I found out that the name is actually, hold on, Johnson. That's so funny. Prostitution was this. And then Common. This is the Snatch Game that I think I started realizing that Rue was not quite plugged in to some of the humor that was adjusting at this time. You can see a shift in cultural comedy where some things are funny because of the way that you say them. And I remember this time period in the world where you would say something intentionally weird or wrong because it got laughs in the room. I mean, we were doing this at my job. I remember very specifically just saying stuff to people in a weird voice or weirdly pronounced because it got laughs. It was just a part of what was developing into cringe culture because millennials did invent cringe culture. I will stand firmly on that. And that has blossomed into something that Gen Z has carried into a completely different direction. But cringe culture is definitely alive and well still. I mean, we were walking around with fedoras and ties with vests on a unicycle. If we did not invent cringe culture, I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth, both feet, and I could fit them. And I think Jocelyn's impersonation was definitely that. And I think she's criminally underlooked in this Snatch Game. I will say on a TV level, this episode feels oddly paced, no? They were trying to cram so much content in that everything just feels like bam, 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 bam. And I don't know what that is. I watched it all the way through and I just kept thinking something felt weird about the pacing. It felt like they were maybe adjusting to the format a little too hard that it became unsuccessful, specifically in the final product. Again, I talked about this way too much. I think this is very mid. Next up, we move to season 7, which I love. I think this is a fantastic Snatch Game because of how involved the panel is. Up until this point, we look at Alec Mappa, Aisha Tyler, Ross Matthews, the Julie Brown duo. They were also kind of muted and just there. But then Tamar gets in that room and she is cackling, full slamming her table, yelling, screaming, having a hoot, a holler, and a hootenanny at that judges panel. And I think that's what makes this Snatch Game so fun. Part of what makes Match Game interesting as a concept is how the panel interacts with the two contestants. Go back and watch an episode or two. There are quite a few here on YouTube. And the ones that are the most interesting are when the two panelists are just having this weird synergy with the celebrities that create a kind of comedic tension in the room that makes us as an audience want to giggle at it. And Tamar being so involved got that guy, I can't remember his name anymore, got him so activated that he also was participating a lot. And we got to see in real time actual real responses to the humor that was happening in the room. It's very hard to edit around two people that find the humor engaging and hilarious. So then we get a more genuine, real reaction to how we're supposed to feel about Snatch Game. Because let's be real, a lot of these girls in the past seasons could have been edited to be funny. Rue laughs at the things she wants to laugh at and doesn't laugh at the things she doesn't want to laugh at. There are some jokes that are genuinely very funny, but I think most of the time, the panel of hosts that they get to come in, I think they are plugged into the TV aspect that if the host is not giggling, we're not gonna laugh either, because clearly something's happening here. And when Tamar is cackling at a joke, it's hard to edit around that. How do you secure someone into a low placement when your panel is giggling at them? So it's very hard to get an inauthentic version of what actually happened, like what happened in season 14, where Raven and Dove were not giggling at any of the jokes because Rue wasn't giggling at them. And so we get these inauthentic edits of what Snatch Game actually was, where this one is very hard to do that. On top of the fact that I think it's genuinely hilarical, with the exception of Fame and of Max and Jaden. They were the only bummers. But Pearl going, I'm very excited. Kennedy's Little Richard is hilarious. Ginger dipping those Twinkies in the wine. I think even Violet was funny. At one point, she like slams the desk, her nail pops off, and Tamar giggles about that too. I quote, I had a rough childhood, okay? I wasn't watching fucking Batman and Robin. Almost like once every day. I love quoting I had a rough childhood, okay? I think this is one of the few Snatch Games where the funny ones really make up for the unfunny ones. And I think the size of this Snatch Game assists in that journey because it's not too big, it's a nice full cast without being too small. It's just in the right zone of how many contestants need to be in Snatch Game to make it funny. We see a lot of the filler queens out. Sorry to Candy. I'm sure you're watching this. Please don't listen to that part. I think that Mrs. Kasha Davis and Tempest would have been genuinely funny here, but that's really all from the cast that already went home up until this point. I just think this is a banger, and I'm gonna put it at finally some good food, because it really was good. Now we move on to season 8, which again I think is kind of a mid-season Snatch Game. It's not bad, but it's not good. Thorgy really takes me out in this episode. Her impersonation of Michael is almost scary movie to me. I think Bob and Derek are both funny, but not personally in a way that makes Robbie, Naomi, Kim, and Betty look less terrible. Like I look to season 7 and I think Kennedy, Ginger, Violet, Katya, Pearl, they all make up, in my opinion, for how unfunny Jaden, Max, and Fame are. I just don't think that these three make the others look less unfunny. Like they don't make up for the bad Snatch Game that was happening. And this is also the first time where we got a celebrity who was not a celebrity. I don't live, laugh, love Drag Race queens being portrayed on Snatch Game, but I don't take a huge offense to it. I take offense in non-celebrity characters. Don't give me someone who doesn't exist. Don't give me some cryptid or an angel or a devil or some nonsense. There are real men and women and non-binary people in the world in the celebrity sphere that you can impersonate who have never been touched on the Snatch Game. And this Kimmy Jong-un was not funny to me. It's hard to watch, personally. And I think for me, the pace stays at like a 5 through the whole Snatch Game. Another thing I don't like is mid-game character changes. Bob does it, Nina does it later, we see it again. in UK versus the World season 1. I'm not a fan of them. I think it's a cop-out. If your character is good, then just be good and do that character authentically. Either Uzo or Carol. Either one would have been a good choice because they were both funny. And I would have liked to have seen maybe what she did with Carol a little bit more than I liked her Uzo. Because her Carol was more studied. It was more of an impersonation, where her Uzo was a flex on her acting skills, which I think is good and I think that's important. But I don't know. I would have liked to have seen her Carol through the whole thing. Personally. Also, this is another issue where the panelists are the ones who set the tone. Tamar laughing and cackling at the season 7 girls allows them to pick up on that energy and be funny and banter back, right? These two supermodels were so low energy, so boring, gave nothing, that there's nothing for the queens to pull off of. And so it just keeps the pace low and the energy bar low. I mean, they weren't even answering the questions in an interesting or funny way. I'm gonna put this at Where's the Lamb Sauce because this had a lot of potential. Michael Jackson, Carol Channing, New York, for crying out loud. And it's funny that we had two characters that were both redone from season 2, Carol and Brittany, who were both the high ones, and both of them ended up in high placements here. This had so much potential to be a great Snatch Game, but it just wasn't for me. Next, we move on to season 9, which for me is silly, but not entirely memorable. And we got Alyssa again, which was an odd choice from Aja because we just a couple years ago had Violet doing Alyssa. And is Alyssa Edwards so memorable and so funny that she is impersonatable multiple times? I don't think so. If you're gonna do another Drag Race queen, there's so many girls to pull from, or even just non-Drag Race queens. Like imagine someone had done Coco Peru back then. She was just kind of getting her footing in the internet sphere with the GTA video. I'm pretty sure that was around this time. And her Coco goes to Walmart, Coco goes to Rite Aid, Coco goes to be a dominatrix. You know, there's all these videos that were circulating online that were riffable, that someone could have done Coco Peru back then and I would have lived. And I think Rue would have lived. Farrah, Cynthia, and Pepper were so not good in this Snatch Game. I didn't think they were cringe, but they were just dead air. Valentina's as Steve Harvey was maybe the only memorable moment in the entire thing for me, right next to Shay talking about Jasmine Masters' prepaid cricket phone. And then calling Jasmine Masters Chris Rock was also freaking hilarious. But then that's the other thing, is that Nina did a Jasmine Masters impersonation, and I think that had a lot of potential, but it just wasn't funny to me either. It had places it could have gone, but it just, I don't know, it was there. Like a lot of these other girls, they were just there. I think this was a big yawn of a Snatch Game. And also Liza being there. I don't think this was the funniest Liza that we've ever seen on Snatch Game. I don't think Scarlett Bobo was that funny, but I think Bobo was funnier than Alexis. And I've only seen a couple clips of Hannah Conda doing Liza, and I think her Liza was funnier than Alexis. Because in my opinion, I don't think that Alexis was that funny. I just think everyone else was just kind of whelming. This is super mid to me. The food is bland. Now we move into season 10, where I feel like the Snatch Game is starting to feel bloated. This one upped the game from last year. It's another really high and another really low. It's another really high and a low. Aquaria, Monet, and Eureka are hysterical. So funny to watch. Aquaria doing that spot on Melania where she had the Michelle Obama nameplate, where she gave the Tiffany box to Rue and had the meme that was circulating on Tumblr to help me. Monet doing that whack impersonation. Cause Maya Angelou ain't no punk bitch. It's so funny. Eureka just drawing pictures as Alana and being the funniest kid to ever be on Snatch Game. And I will hold that to my dying breath that no other kid character on Snatch Game has been funny except for Eureka's impersonation of Honey Boo Boo. I think that Cameron was a pretty solid performance, if not very mid. Aquaria saying, "No wonder husband always talk about China," I think was a great riff off of that character and how empty-headed Melania is and how kind of empty-headed Aquaria was. This challenge was a good device for Aquaria to show she really is just that girl who's not the most intelligent in the room, but it's in kind of a smart way. And I gotta wonder how Beyonce was done again and yet was done even worse. I don't know what Asia was thinking when she got into this Snatch Game. When she sat down and decided, I'm gonna be Beyonce, but even more of a diva. I'm gonna be a parent on the edge who wants to just commit a crime and get away with it because I'm Beyonce. What was the thought process? And when the jokes weren't landing, why did she keep going with this hostile Beyonce? At some point, you could just switch it and be like, I had my coffee, I'm feeling good now. And then turn around the energy or something. Kind of my last note is I want to compliment Eureka for this return to form of what Snatch Game was supposed to be, which is a celebrity helping a panel of judges figure out answers that they wrote down themselves that came out of their brain, had a volley with these celebrities, and also were volleying with RuPaul, all in an effort to show your ability to impersonate someone who exists in real life and be funny at the same time. Eureka did that because what we knew of Honey Boo Boo was very little. She was a little celebrity kid with a lot of energy and was kind of dumb, little redneck, and she loved to dance and have fun and talk about her family. And Eureka did that. She was silly, she was goofy, she was just having a good time, and she was funny at the same time. And I do think that her energy resetting the expectations for what Snatch Game are supposed to be is commendable. Overall, I think it's kind of bad to watch, but I do think that Melania and Alana, as well as Maya Angelou, kind of make up for the bad ones. Not a ton, because the rest of it's still really bad to watch, especially Vixen and Asia. It just feels awful. Everybody else kind of gets overshined by them and how miserable they were to perceive. It doesn't suck, but I don't want to watch it again. I'm putting it at Where's the Lamb Sauce. Next up, we have season 11, and my big question mark is, what was the point in doing this change? I can only assume it was because of their sponsorship that they were advertising that day. I just don't think that Snatch Game needs to be messed with, and if you look, this is the only Snatch Game that has a weird parameter around it. It was just unnecessary in my opinion, and that's my first low mark for it. Second low mark is that no one is funny. I think Nina had a lot of potential. Doing Harvey Fierstein and then riffing off of the Harvey Weinstein scandal that was happening at the time and making sure that it was known that they were not the same person, I think was brilliant cultural relevance that I think was kind of lost on Rue. I don't think she kind of understood it or didn't know how to laugh at that. A problem, her changing characters midway through is a point loss for me. She was doing so good as Harvey, she didn't need to change anything. I think Silky was just Silky. I don't think that she was TS at all, and I still hold firm to that. I think, in my opinion, Suga worked me out as Charo. I think she was genuinely the only funny one in the group, but we have Evie who's bombing, Brooke who's bombing, Plastique who I don't even want to think about how bad her impersonation was, Vanjie doing the worst impression in the entire universe with her voice changing midway through the challenge. I think the problem with this Snatch Game is that the character choices are bad. We're getting to the point where Snatch Game is so bloated that people don't know who to pick anymore. We understand as an audience that Rue is the one in charge of the laughter, of the energy in the room by this point. They understand as contestants at this point probably that Rue doesn't understand a lot of current pop culture and misses out on celebrities that could be funny. So they choose characters that they think Rue will understand. They pick a character archetype, someone who is addicted to weed and can't live without it, a character who is kind of a weird racial stereotype, and they hope that Rue will get that and laugh at that, but then they miss the mark because they're not good at improv and they're not good at connecting their story that they constructed in their head with who they're presenting. So Rue not only can't connect with it, but also doesn't think that the character they chose is funny. So specifically choosing Celine Dion, a well-known celebrity who is polished and poised and lovely and silly and goofy, and then choosing to make her someone who's obsessed with the movie Titanic and then also doesn't really understand where she's at isn't a funny characterization. And that's kind of what everybody's problem was. I don't think anybody was funny here, which is why Silky won. Because nobody was good, and at least Silky was being Silky, which Rue likes. This sucks. This whole Snatch Game sucks. Idiot sandwich. And I think what the final problem is with this Snatch Game is that it's losing its luster. It is no longer about impersonation. It's no longer about pulling from your arsenal of characters that would have inspired your drag. It's about something completely different now. And it loses what match game is, it loses what celebrity impersonation is, and it just becomes unfunny at this point. Next we have season 12, and I have to call out Fierce Brock Ally being the one to introduce the Snatch Game in the title card. I want to know if Dahlia threatened to sue, or if she was on like some kind of contract to have a certain amount of episodes, because why the heck was she there throughout the entire season, just making little cameos? I think this Snatch Game is finally funny. Jackie as Lisa Rinna smashing that cup and saying, "Don't talk about my husband, Harry Hamlin." Harry Hamlin is hilarious. Gigi had a great Snatch Game and connected with Rue. Never have I seen Rue on Snatch Game interact with the queen the way that she did with Gigi. She was getting up on her and having her reboot and asking her questions that Rue doesn't normally ask other contestants, volleying in a way that Rue was in the room with this character, and they were both real people having a real conversation, not doing a bit for TV. Rue was genuinely, I think, having the most fun with Gigi that she's had in years with another contestant. I think Jan's Bernadette was very well studied and funny, and in my opinion, the bad ones in this bunch are bad yes-anders. We knew from World's Worst that Crystal was a bad yes-ander. We knew that Widow was a bad yes-ander. And again, we have another mid-game impersonation change, which I think we really should start separating Tina and Ike from each other and not associating them with each other poisonally. That's its own can of worms. And then Britta and Aiden were so bad and just awful to watch. But I think this is a scenario of season 7 where some of the funny ones make up for how bad the bad ones were. And so for me, I want to put it at kind of mid because, I mean, there are some high highs and there are some lows. And I think some of the good points are really good. It's starting to kind of return to what I think Snatch Game is supposed to be, but hasn't quite gotten there yet. The food is bland tier. It's mid. Next we get to season 13 where Mick slayed the hell out of me. That is the best Paris impersonation I have ever seen. And riffing off of the very well-known fact that Paris has a totally normal kind of deep voice like this, but then does this all the time when she's in front of people because that's hot. And Denali as JVN watered my crops, re-glued my wig. I think the biggest compliment about this Snatch Game for specifically Mick and Denali is that suspension of reality is such a skill that some people have and some people don't. In this scenario, both of them are such genuinely good impressions and characterizations that it's almost like Maya Rudolph doing Kamala. You look at it and you think, that's this person. It's uncanny in a way. And you forget for a moment that it's not that person. And that's a skill that some drag performers have and a lot of this group didn't. Candy was just playing Candy. Tina was just playing Tina. And then friggin' Elliot and Utica were just... I think if it weren't for Mick and Denali, this would be an unwatchable Snatch Game. And I gotta say, I understand wanting to be culturally sensitive, but Bob Ross did have an afro. So it's not appropriation of any way to impersonate a man who actually existed with a hairstyle that he had. And I think it's important to be accountable and hold yourself accountable, but isn't it more offensive to wear a squirrel wig than do the afro? Just something to ponder. I don't know, man. The lows are like Grand Canyon, and even though the highs may be Mount Fuji, I don't think it makes up for how bad the rest of this is. And me personally, I didn't think that Rosé was laugh out loud funny. It was sort of just like, tee-hee, where's the lamb sauce? It's almost impossible to watch. But JVN and Paris make up for the really bad feelings. Next is season 14, where they tried to gaslight me and the rest of the world that this was a bad Snatch Game. And I don't think it was that bad of a Snatch Game, when so many before this were outright terrible. And I mentioned earlier that I have a theory that Dove and Raven were very plugged into the TV side of things, saw that Rue wasn't laughing at some jokes and thought, okay, well, I'm not gonna laugh either because I don't want to be the one that's giggling at a joke and Rue doesn't get it, and suddenly I'm a camera target, or I'm gonna get edited out because I laughed at something that the host didn't understand. Because a lot of these jokes were genuinely very funny. The kombucha, bitch, that was so funny. This weird cringe humor that had evolved to its final evolution at this point of cringe humor that Willow has mastered, because that impersonation was so funny. I laughed frequently. I think Camden's impersonation was funny. I think that Daya's impersonation was funny. I don't think that Lil Jon was that hilarious. As a matter of fact, I thought it was just kind of loud. It was as funny as anybody else in my opinion. And again, I think this is really where we start seeing cringe humor, ironic humor being the focal point of a lot of what current modern humor is. And as we saw from Rue giggling and cackling at the fart jokes of Daytona Wind, her humor is landlocked in something that is older. Her humor reference points are in something more shocking. And I think that's why Lil Jon was funny to her, because it was bombastic and loud. It wasn't necessarily this cringy, muted humor that a lot of us do find funny. Because I think the Snatch Game was amusing. It wasn't the worst thing I had ever seen. Is it mid? Yes, but it's not bad. There were certainly worse Snatch Games where everybody could have been lip syncing in a Lollapalooza, like season 13. They could have easily just saved Denali, Mick, and maybe Rose and told everyone else, y'all lip syncing next week. Good luck. You better learn some songs. I'm gonna put it right at mid. Next up, we have season 15. And girl, this Snatch Game was way too big. I think Marcia as Tim Gunn was brilliant. And I've already mentioned many times that I don't like non-celebrity celebrities, the Virgin Mary, the Mona Lisa, Georgina Chapman from Nevada. I just don't think these are funny. I just don't appreciate these in the Snatch Game, because that's not what it's about. It's about impersonating a real person. And I'm really over it by this point. I think the entire Snatch Game was super mid with the exception of Marcia and Mistress. They were funny to me. And obviously Lucy's impersonation was through the roof, next level, funnier impression of Joan Rivers than I think Jimbo's was. Because Jimbo was funny in Canada 1, but I think this one was even funnier. She was capturing the essence of who Joan was. She had the voice down, she had the iconic characterization, she had a lot of that caricature impersonation of Joan that I think we would look for in a drag queen. And thank God truly for Lucy LaDuca, because Sugar and Spice made that second group so extremely uncomfortable to watch that I wanted to die the whole time I was perceiving it. This is one of those Snatch Games that I don't even want to look at because it makes me feel so bad. And again, it's way too big. Having this many filler queens in such a pivotal challenge was a mistake. And I think that they should never do this again. And I hope that they never do this again. Low bar, idiot sandwich. Lucy, I think you're great. Marcia and Mistress, I think y'all great. But everybody else, boot nasty. Next up, we have season 16, which is very similar in energy to season 7. Saphira knocking it out of the park. I think Q's random little impersonation of someone who isn't quite a celebrity, but I can give it a pass because at least it was funny in a hee-hee kind of a way. Plain is so well studied and hilarious in her impersonation. You are a very ugly man. So funny. Maya doing a non-celebrity, I think I will give a pass to because it was funny. I can really only give a pass to non-celebrities if they're just absolutely hilarious, and Maya was. Could she have transferred that character to somebody else? Totally. And some of the bad ones are bad, but I do think a lot of that has to do with Rue's intolerance for characters that she just doesn't like, or contestants that she doesn't like. And you can really see her biases here with not volleying at all with Tsunami. Anytime that she talks to her, it's like Rue's ready to move on to the next contestant. With Dawn, she hardly volleys and tries to move on as quickly as possible. And with Nymphia, it seemed like she wanted to, but just didn't understand who this character was, oh, but at all. And as someone who has seen a little bit of Jane Goodall, I think that Nymphia captured a weird essence of her that I think was funny in its own unique way. Really, for me, plain Saphira, Maya, and Plasma, they are so funny. They make up for Tsunami not being funny. They make up for Dawn not being terribly funny. They make up for Morphine not being terribly funny. This is very season 7 energy and one of my favorite Snatch Games because of the high highs. I'm going to controversially put this at finally some good food because this was a great Snatch Game. And then finally, after all of this chatting, we have season 17. This is another big one, and honestly, I like when they're smaller. That's just a personal preference of mine. I do wonder if Nicole Richie sued the shit out of Crystal after that crunchy impersonation of her in that terrible zombie makeup, because Nicole does not look like her life was paved with $5 blowjobs, crack pipes, and a trick baby or two. In my opinion, Anya murdered this challenge. One of the most authentically funny impersonations who I believe did the same thing that Mick did, suspended reality to the point where I forgot that that was a drag queen. I truly thought that was Eddie Murphy in the room. A lot of these girls just can't yes and that was really the problem, I think, with this particular Snatch Game. And that's been the problem for many years, is a lot of the contestants they're bringing in do not know how to volley. Being able to improv is a skill that you develop over time, that you have just naturally a little bit of, that has to be fostered through an environment of theatrics. Some people get that and some people don't. I feel like for this Snatch Game, we've completely lost the plot of what Snatch Game is supposed to be, what character impersonation is supposed to be, what yes-anding is supposed to be. And we do my most egregious sin, which is two non-celebrities, and one of them is a cryptid and one of them is an angel, and I don't like that. Maybe I like Jules' impersonation and I thought she was funny, and I can give it a slight pass in the same way that I gave Maya a pass, but I still don't enjoy it. What the problem is, and I mentioned this during my review of this, is that I think a lot of the characters are too limited in their scope of characterization. I don't think they've picked the right people who highlight their unique skills. Sam was just playing Sam to me, but at least it was semi-interesting because it's a character she can identify with. Overall, I think this is a very low tier Snatch Game, and I'm putting it at Where's the Lamb Sauce. Yeah, so I just think by this point we've lost the plot of Snatch Game.
That has been all of my rankings of the US mainline Snatch Games. Again, let me know in the comments below what you thought were some of your favorites. Let me know in the comments below where you would rank some of these Snatch Games. And if you want to see more videos that are like this, let me know what you would like to see me talk about in the comments below. And keep an eye out for my posts because I ask y'all a lot for your input on ideas. Thank you for watching, and I will see y'all on the flip.